Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Chris Corso is a regular on The Price of Business. And I tell you, after you hear him, there's no question as to why. The guy has incredible insight when it comes to the law and really our civil liberties. I consider you kind of a foot soldier out there on the front lines battling for all of our Bill of Rights, some of which aren't very popular, some of which are decreasing in popularity at an exponential rate. Benjamin Franklin asked a great question. Those who would trade their freedom for their security deserve neither, or a great statement, rather. And we have a lot of Americans who are more than willing to do that. And we've got a couple of topics today. We're going to focus on that later on in the program. But in this segment, let's talk a little bit about a very popular holiday, particularly in this part of the country. Yeah. I know in Arizona, where you live as well, you have offices both here and in Arizona. Is Cinco de Mayo. It's huge.
Yeah.
And so it's also very popular with law enforcement.
Oh yeah, good to be here, Kevin.
Good to see you.
And I'm on that front line sometimes alone, but it's good to look to my right and see that you're with me on that line.
I am with you on this. I support you entirely in your efforts.
So yeah, Cinco de Mayo. I mean, it's another one of these drinking holidays, and pretty much this holiday seems to be that's the main focus of this holiday. Go out, have some fun. Party, and of course alcohol goes along with that. So, we have, there's numbers that go across, and that, the National Highway Safety Administration has put out these numbers from 2010 to 14 that about 260 people were killed in alcohol-related incidents here. And so, obviously, with that increases the law enforcement. Everything steps up, and once again, like we always talk about, it's I call it amateur hour for the police department.
Yeah. Yeah, and apparently for the drivers as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
No, we're not giving them a pass here, No. What we're talking about, though, is that we need to have rule of law in dealing with these people, even when they do knuckleheaded things.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of, well, like you say, amateur hour, people drink and drive because they don't learn to drink and drive. Well, in this situation, you want to make sure everybody's safe, and you obviously we don't advocate, drinking and driving, but we also, what we do, though, argue for is, the law enforcement to be consistent and, fair and follow the people's rights and Constitution. And a lot of times we see in these particular situations, that's brought to the surface big time because there's so many more infractions handed out and people being pulled over, and people's rights are just being violated left and right.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And seriously, invite people over and put up cots. Invite people over and make sure you have Uber on your phone and start circulating these rides. Have people leave their keys when they walk in so you can do an assessment of them before they leave. Do things like that.
Yeah.
But also, we want rule of law. And we want,
right.
When you talked about amateur hour when it came to law enforcement, talk about exactly what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, what happens in these situations is they want to up the patrol. They want to get out there and see, can they get how many more DWIs can they write up that night or day? And so what happens is they have to put details on. They put checkpoints and things like that. So officers that may not ordinarily be on a DWI patrol or checkpoint are now brought in for that. And so when you have that, you don't have as much training as you would, say, someone who's accustomed to doing that day to day, an officer. And when that happens, obviously corners are cut, things are missed. I mean, I've had cases come in where they've had to call in, sergeants and different officers to perform field sobriety tests twice on a client, which is a problem. And that happens in these holidays quite a bit.
That is a problem. Talk a little bit about the what people should have in mind when they're dealing with law enforcement. What are some things to consider? Yeah,
well, and right from the outset, a lot of people just don't make the mistake, first of all, of thinking, I'm fine. I feel fine. I can drive. It's not a problem. You have a couple of drinks, you should know that you may be in for a problem.
Not a whole lot of difference between drunk driving and buzz driving.
No, really, not according to the law.
Not according to the law, at least.
And so when you do get pulled over, there's some things that you should, you really shouldn't say much. If anything, you request a lawyer immediately. The police are very good at talking to you about, well, hey, look, cooperate, and maybe we won't bring you in. No, they're bringing you in
Yeah.
if they start a DWI investigation. So you keep your mouth shut, basically.
Yeah, what they're asking for is more of a case to build to bring you in.
Yeah, because there's no listen. And I'm not trying to. I used to work I used to be a prosecutor, but there's no wasted movements in the government. Let's put it that way.
Right.
They're not going to overwork. They're not going to. So everything they do for a purpose, and they do for that investigation. So if they're asking you questions and they're doing things with you, it's for a specific purpose to be used later on. So you ask for a lawyer. You don't say anything, really. You don't submit to any test except for either at the hospital for a blood draw or at the station for a breath test into a machine. Not on the side of the road, but at the station, because if you don't submit to that or agree to that, they'll go get a warrant and get your blood anyway.
Right.
That's about the only thing you should be doing, to protect your rights. I mean, if everything...
Well, not to mention the fact that if you are getting amateur hour, if you're getting a guy who normally does tickets, all of a sudden handling your DUI, he may not even know what he's doing with the devices.
That's true. Yeah, and so, and there's all types of challenges we can...
He may have blew into it and became positive.
Yeah, I mean, let's hold him down.
Bang,
let's get
donuts.
the blood. Yeah.
No, sorry.
Well, no, I mean, and hold it down, take the blood. They do it at a hospital, and who knows the chain, it goes from hand to hand to hand and so on. But if that's all they have, and there's no statements, they need all of that.
Yeah.
So you have to just be careful you have to protect your rights. You have to protect your safety first, of course. But you also have to protect your rights. And to do that, I think you just keep your mouth shut, ask for an attorney, just submit to those two things that I was talking about. And that's it. I mean, otherwise... And then call us immediately.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, I tell people I know the law enforcement. First of all, I'm a friend. I've got friends who are in law enforcement. I believe in law enforcement. You cannot maintain an orderly society without law enforcement. But let me remind you, they're not in the justice business; they're in the conviction business.
Right.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
And often they're looking for the path of least resistance, and they're not looking for the best outcome.
Yeah.
And so, I say beware. I tell my kids as soon as they're, really when they began to reach teenagers, police officer asks you about anything, say I need to talk to my dad.
Yeah.
And based on what the police officer is asking, first thing I'm going to do is we need to call a lawyer. I mean, that's just the way it works. Yeah. It's sad but true. Final thoughts on the topic?
Again, safety. We're worried about people. Yeah, this is what I do for a living. We represent people that are after the fact, but we want to see people safe and have a good time. But remember, protect your rights. As you say, they're in the conviction business. It's all about stats and funding. So just protect yourself, protect your family, and we hope that everybody makes it through that holiday okay.
Absolutely. Be safe. Be smart. Pick up those keys when they walk in. Just ask for them. Mm-hmm. They'll hand them to you. All right, Corso Law Group, Corso, lawgroup.com. That's Chris Corso. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, more for you. I do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at usdailyreview.com, and this is The Price of Business.